In any job, sometimes you just know that what you're being asked to do is a bad idea. The problem, of course, is that someone with all the power is asking you to do it, so you've got to find some way to get out of it. And unfortunately, punching them in the face is not an option. It is important though, especially in wrestling, because a bad move can hurt you creatively and maybe even end your current love affair with the fans. That's no good at all. It could even derail your career entirely if it goes really wrong. And then what are you going to do? Exactly. So, make sure you work on that gift of the gab in order to avoid such issues, which is why I'm Simon from WhatCulture, and this is 10 wrestlers who managed to get themselves out of terrible ideas. Number 10, Brock Lesnar. So, if you recall, at SummerSlam, Brock Lesnar forgot we were in pro wrestling, beat Randy Orton up for real, which triggered a concerned Shane McMahon to come out and also get smacked up by Lesnar. But the latter part wasn't just for the sake of it. It was supposed to be leading to a WrestleMania 33 match between Lesnar and Shane. Very weird on paper. Surely you can't have McMahon get any offense in, or at least anything that hurts. This is Brock Lesnar, for goodness sake. Anyway, it doesn't matter, because those things changed once Goldberg came along, setting up an eventual Universal title win for Brock at Mania. Or at least that's how it all seemed. According to the Wrestling Observer, however, this also tied into the fact that Lesnar straight up didn't want to work with Shane McMahon, and managed to get the plans changed. Number 9, Ric Flair. When Jim Herd was in charge of WCW, he wanted to take Ric Flair, who by this point was already a legend, and make him more relevant, because being one of the best wrestlers ever apparently isn't enough. In short, Herd wanted Flair to shave his head, get an earring, and change his name to Spartacus, or completely change a character that did not need changing. It was really stupid, and Flair realised that, rightfully refusing. Of course, that meant he was fired, even though Rick was the WCW champion at the time. What a mess. Worked out alright for the Nature Boy though. He went straight to the WWE, won 2 more world titles, and then returned to WCW once Herd was gone as an even bigger star. Good work, Jim. Good work. Number 8, Shawn Daivari. When Daivari arrived in the WWE, he was put in the unfortunate position of being Muhammad Hassan's heel translator. That whole gimmick was so distasteful it ruined anyone associated with it, so it didn't leave Shawn in a good spot once the character had been killed off. There was a backup plan though. According to Daivari, Stephanie McMahon pitched him a new idea where Daivari would change his name to, wait for it, George W. Bush. Yep, the then current president of the United States. Daivari would play up the fact he was an overbearing American patriot to try and get booed. Shock horror, the man didn't think this was the best way to go. In fact, he said it sounded stupid and that it would run out of steam in a few weeks, because it would have done. Stephanie did agree with him oddly. And that was that. It was just a really odd conversation when you look back at it now. Number 7, Mick Foley. While the name Mankind has always been a bit off when you take a step back and think about it, it works, and it worked very well back in the mid-90s. This was not, however, the name Mick Foley was asked to take on when he arrived in the WWE. As he was going to play a tortured and hateful soul, Mick was told he would be Mason The Mutilator. And that has WWE Champion stamped all over it, that does. Immediately realising this was the equivalent of taking his career and flushing it down the toilet, Foley simply fired back with Mankind as an alternative, with the added bonus that promos could revolve around the idea of the fate of Mankind. Vince liked it, the decision was made, and Foley saved his own ass. Number 6, Dan Severn. Despite these days being remembered as that moustache guy who wore a grey shirt, Dan Severn was so much more than that. A legit MMA fighter and very successful as a pro wrestler in the NWA, he just didn't fit into the WWE scene when he arrived in the late 90s. With a lack of ideas and the supposed rematch with Ken Shamrock never materialising, the WWE came up with the following for Dan. He would join the Undertaker's Ministry of Darkness and come to the ring with 666 written on his forehead. Severn refused, mostly because he lived in a small conservative town and didn't want the fallout of that hanging over his head. He made the right call, all things considered. Not like that was going to go anywhere. It heightened tensions between Severn and the company, and he left soon after with no words written on him at all. Number 5, Bret Hart. Pat Patterson is a wrestling genius. He's been responsible for countless top draw finishes over the years, and even came up with the Royal Rumble idea. That's not a bad resume at all. In fact, very good one. So when he sat down with Bret Hart in 1993 to suggest a feud where a jealous brother would become his next foe, the hitman was all ears. Until Pat said that the brother would be Bruce Hart. Realising that wasn't the way to go, Bret quickly suggested Owen take that role instead, as it would work better in the long run. Pat agreed, the switch was made, and what do you know? We got one of the best feuds in history. Number 4, Scott Hall. During one of Scott Hall's first meetings with Vince McMahon as he was making his way into the WWE, the chairman of the board had an idea. Learning that Hall's father was in the army, McMahon wanted his latest signee to portray a soldier and fly the American flag in all its glory as a war hero. Hall, being Hall, told Vince that if he wanted him to be G.I. Joe, he'd be the best damn G.I. Joe he could be. But he quickly retorted with his own idea, one that would see him rip off Scarface. McMahon had never seen the movie, assumed Hall was some kind of creative genius, signed off on it, and it was all a huge success. Number 3, John Cena. We all know what happened when The Rock returned to the WWE in 2011. He got into it with John Cena, especially because years prior to this, the man that can't be seen had run his mouth about Dwayne Johnson, but now it was time for revenge. And that was literally how it was meant to go as well. Cena would stand there and take it all from the People's Champ as almost some sort of punishment for speaking out. He wasn't meant to respond at all. Why anyone thought that would be enjoyable, I don't know. And unsurprisingly, Cena went and complained about it. Given that both men could talk and had a reputation as such, fans would want to see them leave it all out there in the ring. As John himself put it would be like LeBron James playing against Michael Jordan, and nothing short of each man's best would do. Thankfully, everyone involved realised this was the way to go, allowing the pair to rip each other to shreds. Thank goodness that did happen. Number 2, Bret Hart. Again, due to injuries sustained at a Starrcade match in 1999 against Bill Goldberg, Bret Hart had to retire shortly afterwards. It was a sad situation, but on-air angles still had to be cleared up, including the fact that Hart was the leader of the NWO at the time and was scheduled to defend his world title against Sid Vicious. The way WCW ended this was by locking Sid in a limousine and then having Bret ride over it in a monster truck, as you do when you don't like someone. If this sounds silly, it's because it is silly, but it's not as silly as what was initially pitched. In that scenario, WCW wanted Sid to actually be in the limo. So not a stuntman or, nobody. They wanted Sid to just hang out and hope everything would be okay. Hart realised how dumb this was and told them to go another way, especially because Sid could have been killed. The company listened and nothing untoward went down. But honestly, really WCW? Really? Number 1, Ken Shamrock. Before WWE went all PG, there was always chat they wanted to run an incest angle. And yes, you did hear me say those words out loud. A part of me just hopes it's not actually true. The thing is, it probably is true. In 1999, for example, the character of Ryan Shamrock was introduced, who, yes, was Ken Shamrock's on-air sister. At the time, Ryan infuriated her brother by dating and helping Val Venus, but the original story would be that Ryan and Ken ended up together. Now, in real life, they were actually dating, but given they were being portrayed as siblings on TV, both said they didn't want any part of the idea. And I think we should be happy they did kick up a fuss, because no one ever wants to see that in the WWE.
Now don't forget to leave a comment below and let me know which ones of these do you agree with and which ones of these don't you agree with, and how much do you hate my bald ass. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, head over to WhatCulture.com, read yourself some articles, follow WhatCulture on Twitter, WhatCulture WWE. Watch more videos here on WhatCulture Wrestling. My name is Simon WhatCulture, thank you for joining me as always. I think I'll see you soon.